Welcome to Clutch Kick Radio with Ryan Lackner.
Rylac, what is going on, man?
How's it going, Andy?
Good, buddy. This has been a hectic one.
Yeah, this has been a hectic, I would say at least 2 or 3 weeks for me, and especially this week. But I can't even tell you, like, it's probably one of the craziest things that I've done because, you know, going from being like in the industry and being an industrial welder and all that to now like cutting up cars and doing that, it's a completely different game. And I'll tell you what, this morning when I showed up with the cutting torch, I was a little bit nervous.
Really?
Yeah, there's something about me that doesn't like cutting that much of a car off. And, I mean, I know I can fix it, but still, there's a part of me that's just like, oh, that's so much metal missing now. But now it looks more like a normal car now because I don't know what they had going on there, but it totally makes sense of why they had that weird axle in that thing because the whole like rear end, it's like narrow like this, and then the wheel well is like this, you know, and then the fender is like it's rounded at the front and it kind of slopes back at like a slight angle, and so it makes the whole trunk look really weird. And after we cut out all the bracing and all the stuff for the factory rear end, it was like, oh, that looks actually kind of normal now. So I think it's going to end up pretty cool. And we had to do a lot of that to get the wheel to set centered.
Sure.
Because their funky axle somehow moved the wheel forward, even though the axle sat back here. The wheel was like offset from the axle a little bit almost.
Well, I'm actually glad that you brought this up because I think it's the perfect first question for our guest today. Edward, are you there?
I sure am.
Here's what I'm wondering about you, my friend. Where do you land? Plasma torch, cutting torch, or grinding wheel?
Ooh.
I've only used the grinding wheel, so I'll go with that.
See, I mean, I only have access to a two-axis settling torch, but plasma cutter's the way to go. I mean,
It's
always
true.
and forever.
Yeah, one of these days I'll get myself one. But hey, you know, today we are sitting here talking to you, my friend. Thank you for joining the show. Edward Lee Thompson
Thanks for having me.
The head of FMC Drift, also, Thompson Racing Team, right?
Well, yes, sir. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, your videos, your group is so awesome, man. I've spent some time on it. You guys have 3,700 members now, and it's all Ford drifting, right?
It's anything that you can put a Ford motor into as well. I mean, we've got some Rangers, F-150s, but we also have E30s, E36s, S13s, S14s. There was a guy that even put a 5-liter in an RX-7, like an FC. So there's a really good variety. We've got like the Panther body, like the Crown Victorias, we've got Thunderbirds in there.
Oh yeah,
you name it, we got it.
That's awesome.
Now I'm wondering how Ryan's feeling about all this because he's not a huge Ford fan.
So I don't know how much of you caught from our first show, but I have a serious love-hate relationship with Fords. I love them.
And the hate part is irrational. He's like, I loved the Mustang. I loved everything about it, but I just don't want to drive a Ford.
And that's basically it. I mean, the hate part is totally irrational. It's just a Chevy thing because I've just been a Corvette fan forever, and I've done my Chevy motor stuff and all that, so it's just hard to go the other way now, you know, but I can't deny it. I mean, Ford Mustangs, man, they're so cheap and they're so good for just right out of the box, V8 5-speed, you know, and it doesn't take much to get angle in them. So what kind of angle kits do you use in them? You guys just mod knuckles, or do you buy stuff? Or
the only angle kit that I've used was Steve Mass John Duncan kit, where John Duncan, he makes the control arm, and Steve Mass he modifies the knuckle. And it allows a little bit better when you lower the car. It makes the geometry not so bad. They actually hooked me up with that through the group because the group, they had been doing so much business through the group that kind of out of appreciation or whatever, they hooked me up with a full set.
That's
I was blown away by their generosity, and it worked great. It's been phenomenal. Hasn't broken. Haven't had any issues with it. Gave me more angle than I ever needed.
We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I actually wanted to start out with letting everybody know who you are, what you do, where you're at, and then, of course, when we're done with all of that, we need to hear about what you drive.
Oh, boy. But before I get into all that, I forgot one very important chassis. We have a rear-wheel drive Ford Fusion in the group, thanks to Matt Sopa, who broke the internet with his putting a 5-liter Coyote into a rear-wheel drive Fusion. So I cannot forget
Hell
that
yeah.
shot.
Nice.
What?
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen it yet,
We haven't. We're gonna have to find that.
Yeah.
oh, you definitely, and if you can get him on the show, man, that guy's a blast to chat with. My name is Edward Lee Thompson. I am originally from Maryland, bounced around all over the place. Spent the main part of my drifting career, I would say, where I had the most success was in Puerto Rico. And I was there for 7 years. I was there from January 2011. And then I settled in Texas in January of 2018. So this is shortly after Hurricane Maria. Wife decided she had had enough of rough weather. And so we moved to the United States by way of Florida. So, but yeah, I've been drifting since 2005, officially at events and stuff like that, off the streets, and been in a number of different chassis. But I got into Mustangs back in 2008. Right now, I am Mustangless, which makes me feel like I'm naked. But I'm itching to get another one. But we're trying to get out of the financial hole we got ourselves into with this move. And it was the wise thing to do to ditch the Mustang for a period of time. And I promise you will see me in one again soon. But yeah, that's what I am, where I'm at, what I'm doing. Thompson Racing, you mentioned that. I started that up. It just used to be Edward Lee Thompson, and that's what I was doing. You know, I was getting some publicity, and I was trying to build up like a brand image and a platform that sponsors could be interested in. But then my oldest two sons started taking interest in drifting and racing and cars. And I was like, wow, what a great chance to do something I absolutely love with my sons. So we started doing that image that you shared with the 4 images. Mm-hmm. That was my Puerto Rico car, my Texas car. My son had the Miata. My oldest had the Miata, which he has since been totaled. And my second son had the Mustang. So I was pretty pumped about trying to get some stuff done with them. My second son, Anthony, is actually leaving tomorrow, crack of dawn, to drive down here from South Carolina, and we're going to actually do some work to his Mustang. We're putting in a ring gear. Going to try to see if I can convince him to put a welded diff in there, and we're going to go around Dallas and have some fun.
Nice, heck yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the Mustang that you got rid of, what year was that?
That was a 2004. It was the newest Mustang I've ever owned.
And
but,
I'm sorry, Edward.
Really cool.
I apologize to interrupt. What is the chassis code on those?
Well, they're technically SN95, but when they made that body change from that aerodynamic shape to the more boxy shape, those are usually referred to as New Edge.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
Mm-hmm.
with those New Edge models, I can't recall what year they started using like the performance improved heads, but they're a little bit more powerful. But the really amazing thing about them is in 2001 and up, they come with a Tremec 3650 transmission, which is absolutely bulletproof. I destroyed like the T45 or whatever is the one that came in because the one that you saw in Puerto Rico is a 97, so it had the T45 in there, and I destroyed that thing within about 3 years. I swapped it over to the Tremec 3650. 3650. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic. And it's been ripping and roaring ever since. So it's a direct bolt-in. I highly recommend it if you got a New Edge and it's not a 2001 and up. Try to hunt down a Tremec.
Interesting.
So what rear end are you using in that, and what rear end have you been using in your Mustangs?
Factory.
So 8.8,
bud.
8.8, or
just weld that. You pull that diff out, weld it up, weld all those spider gears, slap it back in. If you ever see those axles, man, I wish maybe I had it here. No, I don't. I have a piece of that. I finally broke an axle after many years from hitting a curb doing some street drifting, and I kept the broken end of it. The end that was in the differential carrier, the carrier was the piece that I kept. So it was a little short piece. But you can set a quarter on the head of that axle, and there'll be space around the quarter. Those things are beefy as crap. Like you really have to do some ridiculous stuff to them to get to have issues.
Yeah.
Now, Ryan, do we need Edward to say allegedly when he says street drifting, or is it okay since he's in Texas?
It's okay because he's in Texas.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's socially acceptable.
Rico, so that's like practically Mexico.
Exactly.
That do with Mexico.
Close enough.
Episode before last where we had Jim Zhang on, he was giving away very specific details of where we used to race in Portland, and I was like, allegedly, Jim, allegedly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So do you use 7.5s at all, or is it only 8.8s?
There are a few guys in the group that are drifting in 6 liter, no, sorry, 6 liter V6 V6s, and those came with the 7.5s. And as far as I know, I haven't seen too much trouble with those. But man, I will stand by and swear by that 8.8. I mean, the differential carrier, I've never had a problem with it. I put that welded diff in there, and nothing has been able to break that thing loose. All things considered, though, I am on factory power, so it's not like I'm pushing 700 horsepower through the drive line. I mean, if you get up, 5, 6, 700, I don't know how it'll hold up.
That is a conversation that we've had before, though, is the fact that, I mean, an SN95 Mustang, for the most part, you can just kind of grab it and go. I mean, like you said, some suspension components would be great. Some modded knuckles would be great. Welding the diff would be great. But for the most part, you can just kind of take them and go slide, right?
I absolutely agree with that. I think it is probably the most turnkey package. And to put things into perspective, I managed to get a Formula Drift 2 license for getting 3rd place in the 2014 series. This was with factory steering and factory suspension. This was a different time, especially in drifting in Puerto Rico, but it's capable. I mean, you're not going to be doing in the Pro-Am series during that time in Puerto Rico, it was competitive. Would it be now? No way. The cars have come a long way, but it is capable of definitely, for a beginner, being a great car to learn on. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a difficult car to learn on. It takes commitment, and it's very unforgiving. There's a razor's edge where you have to find that balance in the car and the throttle and the steering and keep it there, and it's very unforgiving if you don't get it right. So it leads a lot of beginners just to throw in the towel before they even begin. Like, oh, this is so difficult, I can't do it, and they walk away. Whereas something like a 240 has a lot of forgiveness. It's got a lot more steering angle, the car's very balanced, it's communicating very well to you. Doesn't have all that. It has some body roll, but not as much as the Mustang. So it's a bit more forgiving. But once you figure out that Mustang, man, I kid you not, you can hop in any chassis someone throws at you and drive it like a boss.
So then my question is does adding a steering wheel kit pretty much take away everything you just said, as far as like that being a problem? Now, is it like a lot more manageable if you just did like steering modifications?
Well, to do a steering modification on the car, you would have to go to coilovers. So you're already getting into suspension as well. It's got the spring is separate from the shop.
That's right.
And it's got the spring separate. So to do any kind of steering, as soon as you put the control arm there, you're going to have to go to a coilover because it's going to be like a tiny little, a very compressed A, if you will, so to allow the wheel to travel around it. So you can't have a spring there any longer. So you will have to go to coilovers. So yeah, I mean, you've already. When you put coilovers on that car, it adds a massive level of grip to it, and you have to drive it insanely violently. Before you put suspension upgrades on it, you can. It is somewhat forgiving, but I kid you not. As soon as you put coilovers on it, it's a very unforgiving car. You have to drive it like you're an absolute maniac to get it to stay broken loose, even on factory power. Even with used tires, you got to drive like a maniac.
I like to drive like a maniac. So
you like to drive like an a-hole. That's what
I don't know what you're talking about.
Violence. I've actually I was giving lessons for a while, and I would get the students out there. I'm like, come on, be violent with it, abuse it, run it hard. Like you're being too much of a softy on it. Give it hell.
Right.
And people, especially beginners, are not used to being that abusive to a car. It freaks them out. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to blow this thing up. But that thing will take a licking and keep on kicking. And that's the only way you can drive those things and do it nice.
Yep, I agree.
If you slap an angle kit on there, so in the factory rack, there's 2 plastic limiters on either side of the rack so that the steering, as it goes in and out of the steering rack, it'll bump up against those plastic limiters. You can pop those out, get a little bit more angle, then your wheels are going to scrub. So then you need to put a 1-inch spacer on the front. You'll have clearance, and you'll get just enough angle that you can keep up with most folks. Where I find that angle comes in useful is when you're chasing someone. You constantly need to adjust and shallow up and slow down and speed up. And to do that with no angle is very, very difficult. And considering that the handbrake is pretty much not an option on those cars from the factory. Even the guys that are putting the dual calipers on there, are finding that even that is not a good, like, there's this constant search for what is the solution to get these things to stop. There's just so much rotational mass in the rear with that solid rear axle. It just doesn't want to stop with those single piston calipers that are on there. So they're going up to Cobra brakes. I had RX-7 front dual piston brakes on my rear. I modified the bracket to fit those. And it still wasn't that great of a solution. It would lock up, but then the line would heat up and then it would seize. And it just, so I got in the habit very early on of never using the handbrake. It was just clutch kick, or, put the throttle enough to get it out and just clutch kick it, throw it sideways, time it right, because I know the guy ahead of me is going to be slowing down. So I'll just toss it in a way that I'll be catching up to him by the time he's getting back on throttle. So it's kind of forced me into an awkward driving style. I don't even know if I had a handbrake that worked, if I'd even be able to use it that much, except for tandem. Like when you're running up on somebody, you need a way to slow the car down without getting out of angle. And that's definitely where you'd need that. But if you're starting off, man, don't even worry about that. Just go out there, clutch kick it, throw it sideways, learn the basics, learn to control your car, and get a good handle on what you've got on your butt.
I like that you're using the name of the show, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So what all brake calipers have you guys tried on the Mustangs? I'm kind of curious because it blows my mind a little bit, because it seems like not a lot of other cars seem to have a problem they have a problem when you do like inlines and all of that, or cables, but as soon as you go dual calipers, it seems like that just fixes all the problems.
I will tell you from my personal experience, there's a few guys that have it working in the group, and I think the guys that have had the most success seem to be the inline setup guys. I'm not comfortable with doing an inline. I got to be honest, I'm not that confident in my abilities, nor any mechanics' abilities to plumb that up in a way that I would feel safe driving it on the street, which I hate to admit, I've got full race car out on the street, hanging out with my buddies, hitting up the drift spot.
Oh, yeah.
I like that reliability of having that standalone system. But yeah, there's some big brake kits that you can get for the car when you got the 18-inch wheels and stuff like that. You can fit a larger rotor in there, and you can get a dual I think Willwood has a dual piston caliper that will provide a lot more clamping force. And they also have a really good the reservoir, the master cylinder for that setup. And the key seems to be putting hard lines instead of flex lines. But you do have to make a little flex line right there at the caliper. But that seems to give it the rigidity it needs to lock up. Sometimes you have to prime it a little bit, build up some pressure, and then rip it. If not, as it heats up throughout the day, it will start to break it. It will start clamping the brakes itself, because the pressure will increase in the lines and the calipers will seize up. So you have to kind of you have to heat it, and then it'll be ready to grab when you're ready to do your run.
That's wild. That is absolutely wild to me. That's crazy, because that goes against, like, I swear, everything that I've learned about hydros. So have you tried because I know, for example, when I was competing Pro-Am, we were overheating my clutch. So what we did is I switched to Amsoil. I think it's technically .4, but it's like their racing fluid, and I think it has like 600-degree boiling temp or something, and it's supposed to be like it doesn't lose its viscosity and all that. And so I'm wondering, like, if something like that would help,
or if it's something within the geometry of the caliper itself.
And that may be because basically everyone else other than Mustang people are using Z32 calipers.
True.
So that makes me wonder, if you threw a set of Z32 calipers on there, if that would fix all that,
I believe there's a guy that's done that. And you know what? I don't want to, I would really love to get in the group right now and try to bring up,
oh, yeah.
It's one of the more common questions in the group of how do I get my handbrake to work? And there's a lot of different solutions that have been thrown out, but it still keeps coming up as a common problem. And I personally haven't yet found a solution that works great. But the RX-7 dual piston caliper seems to be working fairly well for me.
That's so funny, because I was just sitting here thinking, if you were in the group, we'd probably be able to search us up and not have a problem. The whole issue of too much weight in the back, I was just thinking about that. We started our conversation talking about cutting torches and cutting wheels and stuff like that. And there's a dude here in the Pacific Northwest that has a full tube back end on his 240. I have no idea what happened to the back of his 240, but that thing was just cut off, and there's like a cage in the back of it now, and the whole thing was shortened way up. And I don't mean to get us like way off in the weeds, but there is a part of me after you said that was like, well, what if we just eliminated the trunk and the back glass?
Is it that, or is it the rotating mass in the axle, though?
It would be the rotating mass, because you've got that massive 8.8-inch differential, and that's welded, and it's all tied into those super heavy axles, and you know, all of that mass that's rotating within that independent rear, the solid rear. It's really difficult to clamp that and get it to stop. Even clutch in, and you're yanking on it. It just wants to keep going. So you really have to have a very strong caliper to grab and squeeze the mess out of it. And the other thing we've tried is different the master cylinder sizes. So we've tried like I want to say it's like 0.75 and 0.625 or something like that. We've tried different sizes, which are supposed to, I believe it is like the smaller it is, the more force it's going to give you as you pull on the handle and things like that. And we've had varying results on that. But yeah.
Do they make a bolt-on dual caliper kit for Mustangs, or is it just homemade by everyone?
It's to a point where these guys in the group are making such professional hardware and CNC and stuff like that it wouldn't. I would say they are them. Are they making hardware for the Mustang? I would say yes. I consider them to be just as professional as I would trust them with my life.
Yeah, but there's not like you can't just like go on the internet and like go on the website and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to order dual calipers for my Mustang. You can't do that though, right?
Actually, you can. If you go to Drift American, is it Drift American or Drift America? I think it's driftamerican.com. We have an online store with products from, I think, 4 or 5 different manufacturers. Okay. And all of these manufacturers sprung up through the group. Like I mentioned before, John Duncan and Steve Mass were the first. Well, no, sorry, they weren't the first guys. Doug Vandenbrink, and I don't know if you guys remember him, but he did a brief stint in Formula Drift in a privateer Mustang. He was running an SN95 Mustang, or maybe it was a New Edge. Anyways, he was the first guy to ever make an angle kit for the car. It was just a little bit out of the price range of us guys, most of the guys that were starting off when Mustang drifting was in its infancy. So John Duncan and Steve Mass came along with a cheaper kit, a bit more of a little hacking this and hacking that kind of thing. And that seemed to be where the community went for some time. But it's now got to the point where we've got guys making stuff on CNC machines that looks like something that you would, like a WiseFab kit almost. And all of that is available through the website.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I know that, I think almost every episode it comes up, but that's the best part about where drifting is now. It's finally at that point where, there is all these guys that have been doing it long enough, like you and myself and a lot of us that, we have all these ideas, and now there's guys that have CNC machines and things like that where we can start building things, that you need and that was never available before, or it was just like some, like you said, hacked up kind of one-off things.
It was really it was so amazing to see the development of the group. We were all sitting around hoping and waiting. Well, man, I wonder if WiseFab is going to make us a kit. Nobody gave a hoot about a Mustang when we all started. It took some ingenuity, on the part of the members of the group to just say, you know what, nobody's going to make it for us. Let's just make it for ourselves. And that's just improved and improved and improved and. Iteration 1 and 2, and they're putting it on their own cars and going out there and ripping and roaring. It's not just somebody that got the geometry and punched in some numbers into a computer and said, okay, this looks like it'll work. Like, these guys were out there doing R&D on their own cars until they got it to a point they thought it was good, and then they turned it loose on the community. It was really a beautiful thing to see.
That is the best way for product development to happen. You need passion. It's something that I constantly talk about. The problem with modern any automotive manufacturer or anything is these young engineers that you're hiring that don't like cars. They've never worked on cars, but they have the credentials, and so they start working at Ford Motor Company or Cadillac or whatever, and that's how you end up with oil filters that need a tie rod end to be removed in order to change them, or a starter underneath the intake
We've all seen the
manifold.
memes.
And so when it comes to performance parts, I couldn't agree more. Having people that are enthusiastic about the platform is extremely important. Instead of someone that's, enthusiastic about drifting is great, but having someone that's enthusiastic about a platform that has unconventional issues that need resolved, that is a whole nother level.
They're specialists. They become specialists in their industry, in their field, and people turn to them for advice. which is one of the things that you guys brought up in your first podcast. Was the first or the second? I can't recall, where you'd mentioned the group, and I was like, oh yeah, man, I love that. Like, these guys have become specialists in their field, and they're not afraid to share that information with you. They're not worried about you trying to take that and make your own kit. You know, they do it for the love of it, because we started off as like the rejects, like the freaks, like the people that nobody wanted to be around. Dude, I kid you not. Okay, so let me tell you. So the first event I ever went to in 2005 was a Club Loose event in New Jersey, right? And I show up, and I'm in my wife's 2000 Firebird Formula automatic, right? I don't really know jack about drifting. All I know is I've seen it on video games, I've seen it in some DVDs, and I saw a drift show off that Falcon put on at a stadium in DC, and I fell in love with it. I said, dude, I really want to do this. I go up there. I'm the only domestic car there, right? The only USDM car. The lady at the gate is taking my registration, and I'm like, yeah, I'm registering for the drift event. She's like, you mean drag, right? I'm like, no, I'm going to the drift event. I get there, and I kid you not, obviously I sucked. It was my first event, but people felt the need to boo me and laugh at me. And I'm not a very sensitive guy, but holy crap, it fueled me. I was like, I can't believe these motherfuckers. I'm so sorry. I can't believe that. I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe people would do that. You know, it was a very different. It was a lot of people coming from drag racing. They were transitioning from the import scene into this, and there's a very competitive nature to drag racing, especially in the Northeast, especially at Englishtown, New Jersey, which is like the drag race mecca of the world. Everybody's there to fire you up and talk crap, you know. So I was not off to a good start. I was like borderline on the fence of like, man, I don't really want to be a part of this community, but man, I really freaking love this. So, you know what, I'm just going to stick with it. So I did like one more event there, and then wound up having to sell the car. I got a 1985 Celica Supra. Maybe it was 86. I think it was 85. Celica Supra, automatic. Another big mistake. Drove that until I blew that up, and then got my first Mustang in 2008. And it was a 5-speed, but it was a 4-cylinder, and it was rusted out so bad that they wouldn't pass it through Maryland State inspection. I had to take it to the junkyard and get $250 for it. It's like, wow, lesson learned. So I searched a little bit harder, and I found a 5-speed hatchback, 5-liter 5-speed. It was in Delaware. Picked that up for $2,600. And by this time, Drift Nirvana was running events at Summit Point, West Virginia, Summit Point Motorsports Park. What a beautiful facility they have, man. Like, just incredible. I fell in love with their skid pad. They've got I think it's like a 200-foot skid pad. They got that really slippery surface like you get in the burnout box at the drag strip. And you can just go and go and go. And it teaches you that really fine car control, where's the perfect place in the throttle to deal with this amount of input of steering. And you're like, okay, here's that balance. Oh my God, I'm unlocking it. And there's a little bit of a variation to the thing. So it's not just like lock it in and go. You have to adapt, because there's a little downhill and then there's a little uphill. And then you're just like, okay, I need to think it a little bit in advance and prep myself for what's coming up. And you just start unlocking this stuff, and it builds your confidence. And man, that track, and thank God for Drift Nirvana. There's a guy named Yoshi, and I met him through a small group called FMC Drift, where we would allegedly go down back roads on the night. But yeah, man, that was a huge blessing.
We need a skid pad around here. That's Ryan and I are looking at each other because we're just like,
you saw me in the comments.
Oh yeah, yep. We need one. Because it does. No, I mean, I'm at a point where, like, do I really need a skid pad? No. Tracks are really fun to me. I love doing, like, the tracks and big tracks and all that, but I still have an amazing amount of fun at a skid pad. It is absolutely insane, because you can just literally go out there and do whatever you want, and you can. And even for me, myself, with my current car, like, there isn't a huge amount of times when I can really just go out and hit crank lock, because if someone's following me, I'm not going to hit crank lock. I'm going to stick just off that, and it's nice to be able to go out and really just kind of play with your car and see what it'll do. It's just a whole different kind of feeling.
And let me add this. Imagine the mental image of a train of cars running around in a drift circle.
Yes, exactly.
Like that. So you can do tandems, and I've seen this happen at a lot of these Texas events. They'll put up a little area, which will be kind of for like the noobs. They can go down there, they can either learn car control, or some of these guys that are really good at tandem can get out there with a new tandem buddy and feel him out. And then they can switch it up, and then they can feel each other out. So, like, okay, that's his power level, that's how he excels, that's how he pulls off. And so you can get comfortable in a low risk environment and then go out on the track and just blow everybody's mind.
Really
I didn't
smart.
even think about that, but yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, really good point. We saw some really incredible tandems being thrown down at the Pat's Acres Summer Jam over the weekend.
Oh yeah, there was some nice trains going on.
Oh yeah, and some people. One of the things I loved was you had some naturally aspirated guys, a 240, an E36, and they were throwing some of the best tandems around that track. They didn't have huge power, but they had complete confidence in each other.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a beauty to that where you get your dancing partner and you learn how to dance with them, and you get in this rhythm, and you know what their car's about to do by the sound of it or the twitch of it. You know what they're about to do before they do it. So you're setting yourself up to time it just right to get right in there with them. And that is just where the beauty of this sport lies. I mean, I could run solo runs all day, and I'll be like snoozing at the wheel because it's like driving to the grocery store at this point. You put me next to somebody, and I will get high as a kite every time. I get that adrenaline surge, and I have to start trying to tamp that down because, I mean, you can run that course 1,000 times and know it with your eyes closed. You put somebody else in front of you, or you have somebody running you down, and your nerves start to take over. And that's the big battle there. That's the big game. Like, control those nerves. That's 90% of I mean, the skill is only about 10% of the driving and the competition and the mindset, trying to control your adrenaline rush, control the fear, the anxiety, whatever it be, and just stay laser focused on what you need to do. That's where the thrill comes in.
I think that's probably the biggest issue for people tandeming you because they're like, oh no, it's the guy in the Mustang. I know he doesn't have a handbrake.
Oh my God, dude. I kid you not. I literally won. Man, I don't want to go just rambling. I don't know. How long do we have?
No, we got we got a while to go.
Yeah,
Go
you're
ahead.
good. You're good.
Okay. That actually happened, and I this is one of the best moments of drifting. Like, I've had like two like really high moments. One was, I think, in 2014. I went up against one of my buddies from the street. He spun in front of me. I kept going, and I mean, this was a very narrow track. It was a go-kart track, and I passed him in the turn. He had gone nose off, just a little bit nose off into the grass. I pass around behind him in drift. I don't lose drift. I mean, just inches to spare from his bumper. I clear him, and I finish drifting out the rest of the track. And the crowd goes wild. The crowd's all along that fence at that final turn. And it was the first time I'd ever done anything like awesome. And I don't even think I won that event, but dude, I went home feeling like $1 million. I was like, yes. All right. But okay. So that was like my first high. And dude, I was so hooked. But the next moment was during the 2017 season. I got off to a very bad start. In the first event, it was raining. I was doing really good. I made a mistake. I can't remember if it was in the chase or in the lead against a good friend of mine, actually my sponsor at the time. And I threw my hand out the window in a gesture like, I'm sorry. I kind of like still hand on the wheel, still drifting, kind of like threw my hand out the window. I was like, oh, my bad. I kept them going and finished it out. And I'm thinking, all right, and then they say, that was against the rules. We're going to dock you a bunch of points. So instead of getting, I was probably got second, they knocked me down to third. I'm like, well, okay. I never saw that rule before, but I'll take that hit, right? I get into the second round, and I get paired up against this guy named Renee, and we go out to do our battle. He loses drift in front of me. He doesn't spin, but he just kind of straightens out and then gets back into it. So I straighten out, and I get back into it to avoid hitting the guy. And they give him the win. And I'm like, what the? And he's one of the OGs. He's been there. He's been doing this before I was in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, oh man, I was not happy about it. I tried to protest it with the judges. They wouldn't talk to me until the entire event was over. And the one judge tells me, well, you should have just ran him over. You should have just ran into him. I'm like, are you out of your mind? I was furious at this point. I was like, man, I was madder than I'd ever been before. But guess what? That's the best thing they could have ever done to me. Round 3, I've got my wife, my 2 daughters are there. My sponsor brought in 2 models. I'd hired a video guy. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have a good time with this, but I am coming for blood, man. I qualified at the bottom of the field. They gave me the lowest qualifying score. And they put me up against, guess who again? Renee. And I'm like, this guy's going down. If I have to drive through his door, I'm just going to full send
it.
I am pissed. Man, I don't know what happened to me, man. It's just like that adrenaline took over, and I did probably one of the best chase runs I'd ever done in my life. I ran that guy so hard. He chased me excellent, but he didn't have the proximity that I did to him. And he's got a more powerful car than me by far. I mean, I have had maybe 300 horsepower in that factory motor, By the way, that motor was swapped in from a Lincoln Mark 8. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But man, I did my best to hang with him. I ran like hell. So I get the win on that. Yes. Okay. So now I'm paired up against one of the Dominican drivers. They would bring the Dominican drivers over. A few, 2 or 3 guys would come over with their cars on the ferry, and these guys had money. They had amazing builds. He's got this E36, like a 2JZ in there. It's just a nut. I mean, it's just nuts. It's got more power than probably 2 or 3 of the cars combined into the field. I'm like, oh man, well, here I go. I'm just going to give it my best. Get to the line. He doesn't show. They give him a 5-minute. They give him another 5-minute. He still can't make it to the line. I get my buy run. Come back. He still can't make it. I get another buy run. I get that pass. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I might have a chance to win this. In the final bracket, I'm going up against my friend Gabriel. And I've run him before, and I know that if I run close to him with that Mustang, it's just something about the proximity that freaks him out. So exactly what you were saying, like people sometimes freak out when that Mustang gets up on them. He's a great driver. I mean, hell, he made it to the finals, right? Let's see. He was leading because he qualified higher, obviously. I'm chasing him. And he does a really long handbrake initiation into the first turn. So I time it perfectly. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give him a little space, and I'm just going to run. Like, I'm going to make him think I'm about to run into him. I did exactly that. Charged hard at him. Go into the second turn. He overcooks it, runs off the track. I drift by him on track, finish out the thing. Crowd's going wild again. Finish out that run, line back up again. And then we do the final run, and I come across the finish line, and I give a big old middle finger to the judges. It playfully, because we're all friends, but I was just like, F you, dude. You guys put me the lowest you could put me on the qualifications. Didn't expect me to win this. Now I've done it. Screw all you all. But like in a good way, like in a very playful way. Oh my God, I was on cloud 9. My daughter's running over to me, my wife running, everybody's just, and dude, like I had a really bad year, 2016. I didn't get on the podium not once. So I'm just like at a point where I'm at the end of my rope. I'm like, man, 2017's off to a bad start. And then I just get that win. It's all on video. Got 2 models standing next to me. Got my wife, my daughters. It's just like, it was just mind blowing. It was one of my favorite moments. And then to top it off, I go out in the parking lot. We're all having a good time. My ex shows up a little bit early to pick up my daughter. And she was a massive detractor. Like she never wanted me to, she just did not believe in what I was doing with the car. And here I am, I'm walking out with the trophy on cloud 9, got my daughter, and my ex is there with her new boyfriend, and I'm just like, hey y'all. It's just like it was like 2 giant middle fingers that day to everybody. It was just like, y'all didn't believe me. You didn't think I could do what I could do. I did it. And I'm not a cocky or arrogant person at all. Like I am, it's like, I don't want to say like, I'm the most humble guy, because then I sound like I'm not. But like legit, man, I don't think very highly of myself. But that day, man, I had the confidence of like the king of the world. It was one of the best moments. But yeah, that car does get intimidating, especially because the memes.
It's hard because I know you're on a podcast having to talk about yourself. This is the part that I hate about going on other people's podcasts too, so I understand it. But let me just remind you that when you get that Mustang again and you start drifting again, if you do end up bashing doors with somebody and they go, hey, what the hell, man? You can just be like, oh, bro, that live axle, that 8.8, there's so much rotational mass.
I couldn't slow down. My e-brake didn't work.
I'm just going to put hashtag because Mustang or something.
Yes. Okay, so we got to wind this back, dude. Lincoln Mark 8 motor. So it's the dual overhead cam 4.6. It's a modular motor. The thing about those motors that people don't really recognize, the difference between those and the Cobra motors, is they have a much weaker rod and I think a higher compression piston as well. So a lot of times, you're putting your finger up.
One key thing you need to remember, it's all aluminum, whereas the Cobra and Mach 1 have a cast iron.
I didn't know that.
So is that the power? Sir. Is that the power limiting factor? I thought it was the rods.
I don't know about high horsepower, like what's the limit on the blocks on those. But if you think about the temperature differences between cast iron and aluminum, when you've got an aluminum head on a cast iron block, they're heating and cooling at different rates. So you have a lot higher opportunities for issues between the connection between the two. When you've got something that's all aluminum, obviously it's going to cool off considerably quicker than that cast iron block, and it's going to weigh about 50 to 80 pounds less. So you're making the same power roughly, the same modification possibilities, but with less weight. I mean, the rods or something you can replace, upgrade. So to me, and I've had both. The Texas Mustang that I had a Mach 1 swap in it, and then obviously the Mark 8 in Puerto Rico. And of the two, I mean, the handling dynamics of the one in Puerto Rico was fantastic. I mean, I want to say it's noticeable. If you got in and out of one and the other, you could feel it if you were in tune with the car.
Interesting.
So now that being said, did both of those cars have the Steve Mass angle kit?
No, the Texas car, I never put an angle kit on it. I never put an angle kit on it. I only had it for 2 years. I really didn't have that much funds to do anything fun with it. I mean, I just did the basics, got the welded diff in there.
So,
I already had the transmission I wanted, already had the motor I wanted, took out the rack limiters, and I went out. I was having a blast. I mean, I don't know I think I may have shared one of those videos with you, or some of the photos of me in tandem with the Hyundai Genesis and the little Miata following me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dude, I'm able to run with these guys as long as they don't do anything wacky in front of me. I can recover.
Yeah. Were you running a front sway bar on that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, I put 373 gears in both cars, and 373 seems to be the sweet spot for not having to shift mid turn or anything like that, and it's somewhat streetable. I think a 410. There's some guys that are running 410s in the group. We actually did a poll, and the majority are running 373s followed by 410s. There's some other guys running really ridiculously high gearing or factory gearing, but for a multi-purpose, multi-use car, I definitely wouldn't go much higher than a 410.
Yeah, that's what the Mustang I had 410s in it, and it's really short, but at the same time it makes it feel like it has way more power.
Did you feel like you were rowing through the gears more, Ryan?
I would say at least second, like 1, 2, 3. Fourth and fifth doesn't. I mean, yeah, your RPM's running higher on the highway, but it didn't seem like I was just rowing gears with 410s though.
Edward, what did that Mark 8 motor make peak power at? I mean, were you able to run it up to 7,000 RPM?
So I've never done anything crazy with the motors in my cars. I've left them factory. Like, matter of fact, the motor that Mark 8 motor that's still running in that car in Puerto Rico has never even been dyno tuned. So it's still running off the GT computer. It's a legit plug and play. I mean, like, you just drop it in the engine bay. All the connectors match up except for the alternator and the coolant bypass. It requires, like, it's got a weird goofy coolant bypass thing that's not on the GT. So you got to hack up a little bit of hosing and splice up a connector for the alternator, and it legit just plugs in everything and starts up. It's nothing ridiculous.
That's nothing.
But the problem with that is the GT has a red line of 6,800 RPM. That motor is capable of 7,200 RPM. So you're and the thing with the double overhead cam is it makes all its power toward the top end. I mean, it's very similar to like a 4-cylinder motor where it just and the higher you get, the more it just wants to rev out. That's where it just loves to be in high revs. Mm-hmm. Whereas the single cam motor, it makes its power more toward like the middle of the power band. And once you start getting up there at the high RPM, it just, you feel the torque just drop off. So even without having it all the way to its limits, it's quite a capable motor. If I had the money, boy, I would love to have done cams. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to, I wanted to keep it NA as much as possible. I love that response. If I had the money, would I love to put a turbo on it? Oh, absolutely. I keep mentioning money. I'm not the only person that has money problems, and that's one of the main reasons I went after the Mustang. I mean, as you guys know, parts are incredibly available. I started off with the Fox body chassis, and I think the Foxes, their production numbers were in the mill, like over 1 million Fox. I might be wrong on that number, but I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of thousands of those cars sold, those Fox bodies. You could find them at any junkyard. You could order parts from over the counter at any auto parts store. And the parts were dirt cheap. I mean, they are one of the most affordable entry points into drifting. If you just, like I said, like you were saying, like if you want a turnkey drift car and you want something cheap, man, that is the absolute best way to get it going.
Ryan and I, we've talked about this before, because between suspension stuff that you can get for the American Iron Series. Do you know what the American Iron Series is for SCC racing? Yeah. So those suspension components, I mean, they're absolutely everywhere and they're cheap. And speaking of, I mean, you can pick up used suspension components off of people because they used it for a year and they think it's done, it's used up. You can buy that cheap off of somebody, especially around Oregon. We have a couple of world-class tracks where those racing series go on. And then on the drag side, you can pick yourself up a mini spool if you don't want to weld up your diff or whatever. So between the two, I mean, realistically, the only thing I can think that you would need to start drifting right away, although, I mean, as you mentioned, you don't even really need it, but an angle kit of some kind from someone else. But almost everything else for these cars, you can get out of a Summit catalog.
Yeah, I would say if you're just starting off, if somebody's listening to this podcast, they're just starting off, they've decided they want a Mustang. Let me rewind. I'm not trying to sell anyone on a Mustang. By all means, if you like a 240, please go with a 240, because at the end of the day, that car is going to give you problems at some point, or you're going to just get frustrated with yourself, like you're not progressing, and you're going to want to quit. There is going to come a time where even the pros have surely hit a moment where they were just like, screw it, maybe this is just not for me. And if it's not the community that pulls you back in, it'll be that car that you love. You really need to love it, but you also need to not give a hoot about it and be ready to stuff it into somebody's door. So that said, go with the chassis that you want. I mean, please don't think I'm trying to sell you on that. But yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out today and you've decided you want a Mustang and that's the route you're going to go, just weld the diff and pull out the rack limiters. That's legit all you need to do.
Okay. How much does that give you? How much more angle does that get? Sorry, how much more angle does that give you if you pull those out?
I never measured it in degrees, but it's noticeable. It's not like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's probably like 5 or 6 degrees. It's probably like adding the spacers in a 240
most,
rack, something like that.
I mean, at most, it's nothing major, but from the factory, they have a terrible turning radius.
Yeah, they do.
Like, horrendous. I've got an F250 with the 6 and 3/4 foot bed, and I think that thing would turn a tighter circle than a factory Mustang. I mean, legit. Like, those things are terrible. Yeah. When you start talking angle kit, I mean, you're in the ballpark of about $1,000 for the angle kit, and you're in the ballpark of about $1,000 for a cheap set of coilovers, $1,200 if you want feels, or somewhere in there for BC racing. So you're talking $2,000, $2.5 if you want to do it yourself. If you're paying a shop to do it, obviously you're getting into a little bit more. And to be honest, I mean, that's like the price of a car right now. You can pick up a Mustang for that much. I mean, you're practically. So when you're ready, that would be the route I would go. I would say that, or I would definitely recommend seats and a harness very early on, because those seats do not offer much support. I would be sore at the end of the day from bracing both of my legs, one against the transmission tunnel, one against the door, my elbow digging into the console and gripping the shifter for dear life, white knuckling the wheel just to try to stay in my seat, so I wasn't like slamming around the cockpit. I mean, get a seat, get a harness, install it properly, and that would really, really help you with your car control. That would be one of the first things I say. So, like, weld the diff, remove the rack limiters, seat and harness, obviously helmet, fire safety, all that stuff, and then start saving up for a set of coilovers and an angle kit. Yeah, that's the route I would go.
I love that.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I know, like, even like me sitting in someone else's car just taking a ride, like if their seat is slightly loose or they don't have harnesses and I'm just clipping in with it's not near as much fun. And I know, like, especially for me as a driver, like, the more comfortable I feel, the better it's going to be, no matter what.
And you have better motor control. If you're not trying to brace your body at the same time as steering and shifting, I mean, clearly you have more control over what the car is doing.
Exactly.
What you want to do, you have more control over your inputs.
I feel like you have a lot more like body feel in the car too. You can actually like feel in your body what the car's doing, because you're not being thrown, side to side and whatever. You can actually feel what's happening. You can feel vibrations and you can feel different things.
That's a classic thing you learn when you're kart racing. I don't know if you've ever done any kart racing, Edward, but you want to stay as loose as possible. And I mean, part of that is because of the chassis dynamics of the go-kart. Like, if you're leaning inside on a go-kart, you're keeping that inside tire on the ground, which is actually a problem. You want that thing to lift because it's a live axle. So you want there to be some slip from your inside tire to actually maximize your grip. That's why go-kart tires are so wide. Racing go-kart tires are so wide. But that actually does translate over into automotive racing as well, because the looser you can be, the more you can feel what the car is doing, and you're not trying to compensate your own equilibrium in some way.
Yeah. When I'm dealing with students, I get kind of spiritual with them, in a way where I'm like, listen, you need to let that car communicate to you. there's a communication that's constantly going back and forth between you and that car. It's talking to you through the wheel, through the sound of the motor, the vibrations in the pedals. And that's another thing. You were talking about clutch, the DOT fluid for the clutch. That's a cable clutch on the Mustang. So you feel every little bit of that clutch push, like you can just, like if you get good with it, you know exactly where that thing's engaging. And I could literally pin the throttle and I could drive that Mustang with the clutch and drift it around the track, just clutch only. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it gets to a point where you can just modulate the behavior of the car using the clutch alone. And if you allow that two-way communication to occur, you will mesh with that car and it'll become one with you. And you'll be able to master that thing and make it an extension of yourself. And that's the idea, to be able to fully use that tool to paint your personality all over that track and all over somebody else's car. Boom.
I have this mental image now of Edward, like, feel the chi, repulse the monkey, don't be a pussy, throw that thing in, be violent.
Well, I try to tie it into, I don't know what the experience level is. I try to get to know what the experience level is of somebody new coming into the sport. So I just try to tie it into real world things that surely they had experience with. Dancing, I tie that into the tandem thing, and they've surely heard of like being one with something and that kind of Zen aspect of things. And it kind of clicks. Like, if I really want to use my screw gun to the best of its ability, I need to know what 1, 2, and 3 settings on it is and how reverse and forward goes on it, and to usefully use that tool and to be able to create something that is representative of me. And that's a connection that you have to make with those cars. It's kind of like it's a relationship. It's a spiritual connection with that car.
It is. I know that I've had multiple conversations with different friends over the years who aren't drifters, but they might be car guys, and they don't understand it, and it's funny because over the years it's taken a long time for some of my friends, but they finally started to kind of understand. It's like it really is a feeling, and that's what I think a lot of people don't understand about drifting. Is drifting really is a feeling. You're feeling it out, you're feeling everything out, you're feeling what's happening, you're feeling what's going on, and you're adjusting to that. And I feel like a lot of people don't see that. And a lot of my friends, they've had that same thing where they just give me their cars when they're having a problem. They're like, oh, I don't know, this is acting funny, here, drive it. Because I feel things in my body when I drive cars that other people don't. I'll feel the slightest vibration. I'm like, oh, that's coming from over here. And they're like, well, how the heck do you know that? The whole car's vibrating. I'm like, I don't know.
That's another thing. Like, on that topic, I highly recommend people to pick up cars that are as virgin as possible, because once you wrench on something, you know what you wrenched on. And if there's some vibration or sound or something coming from that general area where you just worked on it, okay, I think I know what I did wrong. If you pick up some random car that 5 different people have tooled on and wiring is everywhere, and like, you don't know where to begin if something starts to go wrong. I mean, it is troubleshooting from zero. You have to start trying to figure out what it is. If you start off with a virgin car, you start doing the modifications yourself, get your hands dirty, save some money, learn how all these things work together. You get this beautiful mental image. You just kind of close your eyes and feel what's going on around you. Just understand that car, where it's coming from.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I want to tell you a little bit more about the group. We kind of definitely went down the Mustang rabbit hole. I definitely don't want to take full credit for that group. The FMC Drift, I started in 2012, but like I said, I started drifting Mustangs in 2008, and about that time, I found a forum called drift50.com, so like Drift 50, right? And this guy Joffrey Chandler, and he's a California resident. Him and this guy were building this Mustang, a Fox body, and they were ripping and roaring. And I was like ecstatic to finally find somebody as crazy as me, because I'd done all this research. I was like, okay, I like the V8 power of the Firebird, but I want something like ridiculously lightweight. I want this this balance of good power and lightweight. It's like, all right, it looks like the Fox is the chassis for me. It's in my price range. I can afford it. So I'm going to pull the trigger on this. But is anybody else doing this? Does anyone have knowledge? Do we even make an angle kit for this? There's all these questions. So I find the group. Immediately I start engaging with everybody there. I'm young. I'm like 22 or something when I get the car. I'm super pumped. Oh my God, I got my first 5-speed, and I'm losing my mind. But they had some really good talent in there. Like Doug Van den Brink, like I mentioned before, Dan Pena. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he had a Fox body in Formula Drift that looked like a cop car. It had the the light bars, black and white.
I remember that car.
Like California Highway Patrol car.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was there for 1, maybe 2 seasons. They did that was back when they were doing like a was it Nopi? It was some kind of team drift challenge where they would like, okay, this team, you guys go out, and this team go out, and we're going to give a score to whoever's the best drift team or something. This was way,
about that.
2008,
me
2009.
too. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Totally forgot about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So those 2 guys were there. And I was like, oh my God, it's like star power. Like I'm amongst greatness, and they actually talked to me. I was a little kid and I'm just loving it. But as you guys probably remember, forums were not the easiest place to exchange media, notifications, like, oh, new email. Okay, you got so-and-so commented on your post. All right, let me boot up the computer, log into that website. There was no app for that forum. There was, it was like mobile browsers were like, what's that? You want to show me some, WAP, like, what, like smartphones. Yeah. I mean, 2008, that's iPhone just got released. I mean, there was no easy way to get this like instant tech information that you could get through Facebook and instantly share media, photos and videos and things like that.
And Ryan, of course, is looking over at me because, well, my cousin Coy and I were kind of known for terrorizing certain forums. A forum told us one time, we'll give you your own section as long as you keep all of your BS there and not on the regular forum. So we actually had a section of a local car forum called Coy and Andy as Coy and Andy in Coy and Andy. And yeah, that's where all of the races got set up. That's where all of the smack talking happened. That's where all of the everything. And we would just stand there with barrels of gas throwing it on the fire.
Well, I mean, let's just put it this way. I was friends with the 2 guys and I never commented in that. I just would hop on and read it every day.
It was entertaining. I mean, this was at the time before netiquette was even a word. Like netiquette, what is that? Like, how are you even supposed to use this internet thing?
Yeah.
People were
no
really
rules.
people were just off the hook.
Dude, it was the Wild West out there.
It was
like Twitter, but all over the internet.
Let me tell you, dude, I am so glad that a lot of these car forums are defunct and gone because I could never run for any kind of political office, but like if those forums were still up, there's no way.
Hey, they got that Wayback Machine, so watch yourself. But so it was kind of out of the frustration with that. Not so much frustration. It was just like, I was finally starting to get media from my events and I hated that I had to so to get like a good high quality thing, I would upload it to Flickr and then I would get the HTML code from the Flickr image or media or whatever, and then put that into the HTML coding in the post so it would show up, widescreen, so it wouldn't be this itty bitty little thumbnail, so I could get people to engage with it. And my goodness, it was just such a hassle. So I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. And I'd been on Facebook for some time with UMBC Drift, and I was starting to see the value in that. I was starting to see a lot of shift, and just like almost everyone I knew was on there now. And I was like, you know what? Maybe now's the time to pull the trigger on this. I don't want to be a competitor to that group because I highly value that group. That's where I got my start. I have nothing but respect for these guys. But maybe we can just get like a media sharing group going. So I started it off as it was FLM Drift. It was like a Ford Lincoln Mercury Drift. And because that's what you would see. You would see the dealership, Ford Lincoln Mercury dealer. It's like, okay. But then we started getting all these, like the diversity in these chassis, like P36 guy would show up like, hey man, I need some tips. I put a 5-liter in my car, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what, maybe we should just make it Ford Motor Company Drift, FMC Drift. And it has that beautiful classic logo. I don't know if you guys saw the group logo, but it's that, like, I think it was like Ford's first logo. It's got all the, like that embellishment around it and that old font. And we kept the Ford Motor Company and then had Detroit. And we just took the D is still same from the Detroit, and just put Drift. I mean, it was a blatant ripoff, but I mean, at the time we were so small, and it worked great. People loved that logo. They just took off, and it was much more inclusive. There was a time where I wanted to just be like American Drift or USDM Drift, and I put that idea out to the group, and like, hell no, we ain't gonna have no Chevy guys up here. Okay, guys, all right, rednecks, don't kill me now. So we just kept the Mustang, and then I went and I have another group called GM/LSX Drift, and it's not nearly as successful as the as FMC Drift, but there's a good there's some pretty good talented guys there with some good builds, and There's not nearly as much technical info being exchanged, but it's a group. And I also made a BMW Drift because I had a bunch of friends that were just getting really nuts about BMWs. And I had a really good friend in Puerto Rico, the Lizardi brothers. The Lizardi family has this I wouldn't call it, it's a car repair. They also sell cars and buy, and it's like slight junkyard. They just do everything. They are massive BMW specialists. I was like, man, I just wish there was a way to share these guys' knowledge with the world. So I was like, let me make this group, let me toss them in there, and let me invite a few other guys that I know that are ripping in BMWs, and maybe they can get all their heads together, and maybe that'll be something. And unfortunately, that's been pretty much a non-starter. I've actually got more like Eastern European, like Russian and a lot of folks from Africa. I don't know if you know this, but like down in South Africa, they're doing like these crazy, like, they're similar to slideshows, right? But when they like shut down an intersection, they're going nuts. But this is actually on the track, and they like climb out of the car, and they're on the roof of the car, and it's like on autopilot, and like so. And a lot of them use cheap old BMW like 318s or 325s or whatever. And so there's a ton of like African and European presence in the group, and I don't know how people are finding it, but it's blowing up. But I'm getting so much spam from that group. Filtering it is becoming quite a task.
Well, I mean, come on. You got Africans and you got Croatians. Like, come on. Of course.
It's crazy.
FMC Drift, like, before I knew it, everybody had transitioned off the forum, and the forum died. And I never meant to do that. I felt so guilty. I was like, oh my God, I killed somebody's baby, like that was our spot. And all that tech information is there. It's going to be lost forever. But thankfully, the same people that were volunteering all that tech information and all of that time and attention and skill, and like now you can get immediate, hey, how do I do this? I'm in the middle of doing this thing and I hit a jam. Like, somebody help me. Boom, notification on Facebook. Ding, I got a message. And you get like real time feedback, and people just ate it up, man. And it just took off. For the longest time, I was the only admin, but I want to say back in, I think it was like 2015, I was really going through some hard times with my ex, and there was just massive amounts of drama in my life. And I stopped using Facebook, and I've cut way back on it. I mean, I will literally get on Facebook one time a day, go through my notifications, reply to comments, and then I disappear. It's got to that point. So I was like, well, I can't neglect the group like this. Let me see who would volunteer to be an admin. So we got a few volunteers. One didn't work out. A few of the other ones did. But they've maintained my vision for that group. And a lot of my vision for that group came from the generosity and love that I was experiencing in Puerto Rico. Just to paint you a picture of what I was experiencing over there. I went to my first drift event. So I'd been there for a year. I'd finally got a job, got a car. April of 2012, I get this car. Rocky relationship with my girlfriend at the time. We're on one of the on again, but we're on an off again time. She's out. She's moved out. I'm emotional. I leave the house. I'm looking for a car meet. The car meet wound up not being there. Got on Facebook, found another one. It was about 45 minutes from home, or from where I was. I drive out there and I pull in, and I'm like, oh my God, they've got a little drifting competition. Oh, I'm signing up for that. And it was the first time I think it was like the first time I'd seen drifting there, or like an actual event that I could enter. And this is in that SN95 that you guys see that I have down there in Puerto Rico. So I go there, I register, I do 3 runs, and I seize the motor. I hadn't checked the oil since I bought the car in April. Ooh. I just assumed that it had oil. I checked it, and I was so emotional. I mean, this is in, I think, June. So I got in April. This is in June. I hadn't checked the oil. The 4.6s burn oil. Like, they leak and they burn. It's just something you have to check every month or so. And I didn't know this. So I go there and I seize the motor, but I win the rookie trophy, like first place rookie. And I'm like, that's the first time I ever won a trophy ever at anything in my life. I'm like, oh my God, it's finally verification that like finally I get some validation. I've been doing this since 2005. And then finally 2012, I get my first validation that, okay, I might actually have a shot at this. Like this is actually working out for me. But holy crap, I've got a car that the motor seized. And they, like, everybody jumped in and they're trying to turn the crank over, with the breaker bar. It's locked. And I'm like, oh man, what have I done? Like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And I'm like on a high, but on a low at the same time. I'm like in this weird emotional state. And all of a sudden, I see the guys like grouped up and they're all kind of like huddled together and talking. And I'm just kind of like in my own world of like worry. And then one of them comes over to me. I can't remember which one it was. But a lot of these guys, I didn't know from Adam or Eve, right? There was like one or two of the guys that I knew. They walk over to me and hand me a handful of cash. They had all pitched in together. They'd all put in money, 25s, 10 here or there. They'd come up with, I think it was like $120. The tow wound up costing me $200. And I was just like, I was blown away. You have to understand, I come from the East Coast, and I don't know if you guys have ever been over to like New York area, Baltimore. I mean, there's some roughnecks over there. They're not like, you get close to them, they're like, back up, bro. Like, I don't want what you're selling. Don't even come at me. It's not, they're just not like here in Texas. I mean, people are just incredibly friendly, but that's something I had not experienced at that time. So I was in like culture shock. I mean, I was going from this like, don't mess with me. I'm incredibly independent. I don't want your help. Don't bother me, to this culture where it was just arms wide open. Like people were just, they had no concept of personal space. They would just get all, I mean, they would talk, a foot away from your face and just lovingly talk, I'm not trying to fight you, but they just had no concept of that. You shake a hand and they're grabbing your arm and pulling you in and, doing their arm around the back thing. And girls are kissing you on the cheek. And I'm like, I have never had this many people violate what I felt was my personal space. It was just something I had to let go of. And so, like, this is the culture I'm in. You got to understand. So this is what I'm experiencing at this time. And I'm like, oh, my God, if there was just a place like this, but on the internet, this would be Mecca for car guys, and especially for Mustang. Like, let me make this into that vision of just this absolute outpouring of love and knowledge and experience and just feeling welcomed. Man, I can't tell you how many times, like, even from my first experience of drifting, how many times I felt like a total outcast, a total loser. Like, what are you thinking? You're here with this USDF car. Like, I just felt pushback and rejection everywhere I was going. But man, I got there and I felt like I was home. I was like, oh my God, this is like the family I never had. Like, these people are giving me more generosity than my own family. And believe me, there's been times where I've been homeless. I've been in 5 different homeless shelters. I've slept in the woods. I've been down and out on my luck. I've struggled with addictions, all kind of mess. And there was nobody to help me but me, and seeing that kind of love just from random strangers, man, just because I share the same interest as them, blew me away. And I was like, man, I've got to make this community operate along those lines. So that was the goalpost that I set. I was very much in touch. I didn't have a car. I wasn't doing any drifting. So I jumped into photography big time at that point. I was shooting all the events. I was just always on social media. I was super engaged with my baby. I just wanted that group to work out.
You hear that, producer Nick? Photography? Nick, our producer, just got himself a new camera, and he is loving the photography. I'm like, more power to you, buddy.
What Nikon, Sony, Canon?
Oh, it's a Sony A6000. We're going to start using it for the studio. Yeah, see?
Okay, I have an A6000. I have an A6300. I started with an A57. I don't want to go too much down a rabbit hole, but man, bang for the buck. And believe me, dude, I search for a bargain like no other because I just don't have the money to waste. So I try to get the most feature and quality for the buck that I can get. And boy, oh boy, does that deliver.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He said that's like all the research he did. That was the best camera. As a matter of fact, Edward, that kind of segues me into my next question, if you don't mind. Now that you've had this forum for so long and all of the forums, let's talk dream drift build. Sky's the limit.
Oh, man.
And it can be a Coyote and an E30. I don't care.
The next build that I personally want to do, I really like the S1 197 chassis. So the next one up, like that first retro look where it's still kind of square in the front and still kind of square in the back. Man, those look so sick, low with some flares, maybe a little ducktail or something like that. There's just something I really love about them, but I do not like the 3-valve motor that's in those. The first thing I would want to do to that is Coyote swap it. So for me, I think that's my eventual goal. That's going to be my next build. So I've kind of done the progression. I've gone Fox, I've done the hatch, the notch. I've gone to the S90. I even had the I don't know if you know, but the first 2 years of the SN95 had the old 5-liter. They carried over in 94 and 95. They still had the 5-liter from the Fox, which was a total dud in that car. I mean, that car was a little bit heavier, and it just was a terrible pairing. but I've had a 94. So I've had like every iteration now, all the way up through all of the years, all the way up to New Edge. And I'm like, all right, well, let me just keep going with that trend. Let me going up to this 197 and see how that works out. I've drifted one of them. Dude, I've drifted just about every freaking thing under the sun. And it feels, I swear to God, it feels just like the New Edge, but more 240 SX-ish. I don't know if that's a great way to describe it, but it has like, when you kick it out, it'll stay out. It'll float, but not uncontrollably where it's just like, going flying out crazy. Like the 240 has this thing where when you toss it out, it just wants to be out, and it'll gladly stay there.
And it stays,
much persuasion. Yeah, you don't have to give it
throw it as hard
persuasion.
as you want. It's going to stay there.
Yeah, and then just like, okay, I'm ready to transition. Okay. It's like a bike with training wheels. It's incredibly easy to throw around, and I've had the chance to throw one around. We were having issues with the ABS was still kicking on, even though it was supposed to be fully disabled. And I was like, well, dude, if I just pull the freaking ABS fuse, and I'll be good to go. I could just toss that thing crazy as I want. And I feel like it's a little bit more controllable. It's got a better suspension geometry in the front. There's more room in the shock tower. That's one of the big limitations of the SN95. I mean, the shock tower, you put a coilover there and coilover in it, and there's almost nowhere for it to go. It's very limiting. And shock tower is obviously not something you want to start chopping up. But with the 190 S197, you've got a lot more adjustability in that front suspension area. And from what I gather, I think so. My goal with the New Edge that I had is I was going to swap in an independent rear suspension from the Cobra, and I picked one up. I had one; it was a wrecked one, and I was going to rebuild it with a bunch of parts from it's like Full Tilt Boogie Racing or some weird name. They make a bunch of parts for that rear end that you can really beef it up, and it'll take some abuse. I was like, man, that would just perfectly balance that car. Having that weight, adding weight to the rear of the car below, I mean, it would just, I get the feeling like it would just, I've never driven an IRS Mustang ever, but I get the feeling it would feel much more similar to like a 240, just heavier. And I think it would provide more controllability, more adjustability. There's some guys in the group with IRS or like True Cobras and things like that, and they swear by it. They're like, this is the holy grail. So that was my goal with the New Edge. I think there's a way that you can get the rear end out of a Thunderbird, like that weird, like retro modern Thunderbird. That is also on the same chassis platform as the Lincoln LS and the Jaguar S-Type. And the S197, that platform that they used for the Lincoln LS was supposed to be the next Mustang. But I guess essentially they just extended it and put the 2 extra doors in there and made it a 4-door sedan. But there is a lot of similarities that chassis has to the actual Mustang that they ended up making. That S197 chassis has a lot of similarities to that Lincoln Jaguar and Ford chassis. So I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect that you could probably get an independent rear suspension from one of those and get it to work in the S197 chassis. So that was where I was going with my next build. The dream build, man, I don't know. Like, I don't know, dude. Really, I kind of like the challenge of progressing through the chassis. I mean, if sky was the limit, I would just get like the sickest, I don't know, man. Like sickest Shelby that the money could buy right now. Maybe? I don't know. The carbon fiber wheels and just like I will dominate all. But then I get the feeling like I'm one of those kids, like, all right, if I just throw a bunch of money at this, I'm going to be great, I don't want to be that guy. I would rather challenge myself to work my way up to that because that's what I've seen. And I've seen so many people jump into all kind of communities of drift and like. They're coming from a drag background where money wins races. The more parts you throw at your car, the faster you're going to go, the better you're going to be. You just need to shoot down and stay straight. And they got this mentality that, like, if I outspend you, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the drift king first time out. Like, bro, that is not the case. And then you've got these guys that don't have the money. They spend 3 years building their car to some high level, and they don't have an ounce of seat time. And they go out there, and the car is way overbuilt for their capabilities. They don't know their butt from their hands, and they're just like, and then they sell it's up for sale in a few months, and then somebody else gets to benefit greatly from their error. Yeah, like you guys said, there's a lot of deals to be had out there. People that just found that the car was beyond their capabilities, or they got spare parts, or whatever it be. And if you've been having seat time for those 3 years, those 3 years of seat time are gonna for sure prepare you for the race car they built.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I have to say, I love how zen you guys are with your driving. Like, everything is so, like, it's all visceral, and you feel this out and all this other stuff. It makes me feel like we should be doing...
Are you going to make me buy a Ford? Is that what this is?
no.
He's like, you better go. I'm going to have to go buy a Ford Mustang next week after this.
You know what? I think we need our own motivational dealie going on here. I think we need our own... Like, I don't know what you call it. One of those ones where you listen to it at night when you sleep, right? You
like
get where I'm going with that?
Nature sounds or something, or
yes, exactly. But it can be drift sounds. It can be the sound of you saying, "Oh, we gotta do this and feel this way," you know.
But no, I mean, like you could legit become a motivational speaker off of this stuff. I mean, there are so many parallels between racing and life. I mean, just the when you're transitioning from one direction to the other, having to let go of that wheel and allow that transition to occur. I mean, that is like the basis of everything in life. Life throws so many curveballs at you. You have to be adaptable. You have to change direction, and you can't do it if you're white knuckling that wheel. You got to give up control occasionally and allow life to transition you to where you need to be. And there's all these parallels that you can draw between the two. And a lot of that, like, I focus heavily on that, especially with students, because like I said before, I mean, racing is 90% mental. I have seen incredibly talented drivers throw away a run just because they made a simple mistake in the first run, and they get inside of their heads. And I'm confident they could go out and beat the other guy in the second run, but they're so mind screwing themselves that they get up on that line, and you just see it happen. It's visible. Like, they just lose their marbles. And even though you know that on any given day they could whoop that other dude's butt. So, I mean,
I've seen that multiple times too.
Well, here,
like drivers.
I'm just throwing this out as an idea. You know, let's see how this fits, shall we?
Oh boy!
Feel the wheel in your hands.
Is this going to keep me up at night or put me to sleep?
Reach up
I'm not
for
sure.
the e-brake. You feel the back of the car begin to slide.
Push the throttle to the floor.
I'm just saying. I mean, it could be a thing.
I don't know. That might keep some kids up at night.
Well,
Only with
they got those
partial
like
erection.
ASMR channels now. You know, we could just gently talk into the microphone about the vibration of the wheel as it pulsates in your hand. Feel the throbbing of the pedal under your foot, and just talk dirty to it.
Let me tell you something. I've done a few podcast mentorships recently, and people are like, "Yeah, would you review my show?" And they're right up on the microphone. They're like, "Yeah, thank you for listening to Burp and Fart. Get high and talk shit. Today, we're getting high and we're talking shit about my neighbor." And then they wonder why their podcast isn't going on. Anyways, that was a total sidebar. Sorry.
Oh, man. Yeah, dude. Man, I could go on forever. Man.
Oh, yeah. I do have to say,
you guys have to stop me at some point because, I mean, shit, I could talk till I run out of breath.
There's definitely more questions I have, and we're definitely going to have you on for another show because there's not enough time for those. But I do know, like, one thing that I want to hit on is definitely something you said that is something that blew me away was, I want to say that it was 2012 or 2013. One of my buddies came back from the military, and that's really what started my love-hate relationship with Mustangs. And so I did a lot of research into Mustangs because he bought one and he wanted to drift and he wanted to do all this. So I was like, all right, fine. I hate Mustangs, but I'll do it for you because I'm going to build you all these parts and all this stuff. And I'll tell you what, that's when I first became a part of FMC Drift. And it's amazing. The community is amazing. And I think the thing that blew me away the most is not as much nowadays, but especially back in that time, there was zero info. Like, there was no info being shared from anyone. And I'm talking like 240 world. Like, we're not even talking the Mustangs. We're talking like your mainstream drift cars. And then, like, I remember we were searching on there, and my buddy goes, "Hey, man, look at this." And I remember, I don't have it anymore, but we had screenshotted and saved the picture from because Steve Mass had made a post, and he literally put out every single measurement, every single picture, and all this stuff of how he did his angle kit. Wow. I'm like, I could literally just go on there and build this for you, dude. I'm like, we don't even have to have this guy do it. I could do it. And I was like, it blew me away.
in business, sometimes putting your best foot forward is a great way to like kind of virtue signal for your company and for what you're doing, and kind of show people that you genuinely care for the community. And yeah, I mean, you could build it. You absolutely could. I mean, you could go on that forum, you could search. I mean, all of these posts are searchable. You could go back to the very beginning of the group, and you could make your own business if you wanted, building Mustang parts. But then you would kind of feel guilty about it, legit, because you're like, dude, like these people are giving away this information, and I'm just ripping this off. This ain't right. Like to take advantage of someone's kindness, it just doesn't sit right with a normal human being.
Well, and that's exactly how I was, man. Like, I know when he sent me that, I was sitting there by myself looking at it, but I feel like I was just like, oh man, like, holy God, I'm going to screenshot this. Yeah. And like, I know there was a little part of me that definitely felt bad. I was like, man, we're so undercutting this guy. But at the same time, it's like, it was seriously the coolest thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. There was nothing like that back then.
I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad if they've done that. I mean, there might, people trying to save money left and right, especially now. Like, if you got the skills to do it, which I don't, man, I don't know my way around a welder. I don't know how to turn a sucker on. Like, I wouldn't know how to weld the first thing. I mean, I think I could probably bend some pipe, but man, don't leave me alone on a welder. I'll set the place on fire. So, for somebody like me, that's a great deal to have him make it. I mean, if I had skills with a welder, would I try it? You bet your butt I probably would.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that was the coolest part about it is that's pretty much the vibe that I got from it. Like, it definitely felt a little wrong, like you said, but that was the vibe that I got from it. It was like, you know what? If you want to build it, here you go. Like, have fun. It's not a big deal. Like, do your own thing. We'd rather, and I think it's kind of cool because
the more the merrier.
Yeah, well, I mean,
the more the merrier.
The thing
everybody's having fun. Everybody with angle, dude. That's our dream for the world.
Oh yeah. And all those guys who are going to build their own stuff, they're going to build their own stuff whether your stuff's out there or not. You know what I mean? And for me personally thinking about it, I think I would rather have them build it somewhat correctly than have a bunch of junk out on track that's going to blow apart and maybe hurt someone else or flip a car or, I mean, whatever, There's a lot that can happen there.
Oh, yeah. Well, for good YouTube content.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that from you. I didn't know you before even hearing your podcast, and to hear you just like out of the blue say that about the community, and just the chance that I don't know what possessed me to look for more drifting podcasts, but the main one that I listen to hasn't been as regular as usual, and I was like, I wonder if there's any other new drifting podcasts out here. I remember there was something going on, and boom, I found you guys after your second episode, and I turned on, I think it was the first episode that you guys made that mention. I was like, no flipping way. Like, I can't believe that's, this is not being influenced by me in any kind of way. I don't know you for that. I mean, you're not saying this to toot my horn or anything like that. Like, you genuinely had a great experience on that group. And man, that's exactly what I was trying to nail. And that made me so incredibly happy to hear. You have no idea, man. I'm like, okay. Because don't get me wrong, there's been drama, and especially recently, there has been more drama than normally is in the group, and there's been some conflict between manufacturers, and somehow I'm always the middleman, and it's just like it jacks my stress level through the roof, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I have to do with this? But to know that even despite all that, people are coming away with good user experiences, man, that's just, dude, that made my day, man. You have no idea how happy that made me.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad. I mean, I know that. Yeah, back then it made my day to know that I didn't have to do all that and try to figure all that out, and not only that, we've had so many random things throughout the years with those cars and other cars, and it's like, and the shortage of info is not stopping. It's just getting more and more and more. I mean, it's crazy.
The like, what is like the hive mind? Like the aliens and the alien movies, they're all controlled by this hive mind. It's just like this combined experience and knowledge from all of these people that are willing to share it, that don't feel like they have a monopoly or that they're owed something for this knowledge. Like, well, I'm not going to give you this information unless you pay me for it. Like, that's not the spirit of that community. They're just like, dude, let's all, like, there is no question in the world that you can ask on that forum that somebody doesn't have firsthand experience with. That's just mind-boggling. And one of the great things that's led to that is that group, that 3,700 number, has been carefully sifted through by the admins, my co-admins. They do like a background check on everybody that applies, tries to become a member. They check, see if they have anything car related or Mustang related, or at least something drift related. So it's not just filled with fanboys, because there was a time where we were just kind of letting anybody in willy-nilly, and it was becoming just a bunch of fanboy stuff, and then we would get trolls, and so there was a time where we were just letting everybody through the gate, but then trolling started picking up big time, and we were like, dude, we got to put a stop to this, and we got real serious. So like that 3,700 number is, obviously they're not all drivers. The last count I did, we were close to 300 drivers, so I'd say about a tenth of our number is drivers. But man, the amount of experience of these people, and even the people that are interested in becoming drifters, they've likely had a Mustang, or maybe they've done some drag racing or circuit, or they have some kind of experience that they're coming into that group with. And it's just become a wealth of knowledge. It's just, man.
Well, I have some bad news. Your admin's letting me in, so could be going down here hell real soon here. Hey, Edward, listen, man, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you want to talk about the best parts of the internet and the best parts of information. You're here, you're doing it, and I'd like to think that Clutch Kick Radio is going to be a place where people can come to get the information, the entertainment that they need, and I appreciate you contributing to it.
Absolutely. Thanks for putting, this is not promotion, but thank you for giving me a little bit of a platform to speak about the community. I mean, I've talked with people one-on-one about it, but this is my first chance to just kind of get this out there to the whole community, let them know. I mean, there's a lot of people in the group today that just joined that don't even know where it came from. And I'd like them to kind of see this and get the feel for the spirit of the group. And hopefully that continues going forward.
I love that, man. And I cannot wait for your motivational whatever you want to call it, your drift. Oh, you know what you could call it? You could call it drifting to sleep with Edward Lee Thomas.
Oh, there you go. You better patent that right now.
Oh, man. Yeah, we'll see what happens, buddy. Thank you guys so much for having me on. You guys are great hosts. I hope to learn more about you guys as the podcast goes on. You guys just kind of popped out of nowhere. I appreciate all that backstory on like the Northwest, drifting. I mean, that's always been fascinating to me. Like I said in the comments, do that park track, man. That's one of my like bucket list tracks. I really want to drift that track someday. Yeah. It just looks like boatloads of fun.
Well, you just let me know when you want to do that. So I'm gonna have probably, we'll say 2.5 drift cars because one's supposed to be my daily driver, but we all know how that goes. So I'll have about 3 drift cars here this summer sometime. So
yeah, if you can find a way to break away.
Yeah, we'd love to have you out here.
A lot of my plans, I put them out there and they don't come to be. But me and the wife are working hard to get out of debt so we can buy a RV travel trailer. I've got this nice F-250, and it is our goal. We want to live in it full time, but obviously we don't have enough remote income to go travel full time. But we are going to. The travel bug has bitten us. We want to get out, and I have drift friends, Mustang friends all over this beautiful country and all over this world. And I am dying. I'm itching to go visit some of these people, meet them in person. I've met a massive amount of people in person and online. Nothing would thrill me more than to just go to different random tracks around the country and meet people, hang out. And I don't know, just be like a drifty drifter all over the place.
Hey, Travel Channel, we want this.
Yeah.
Fund it.
Believe me, we've already got something in the works. My wife is working on the branding, but that is.
Yes.
I mean, my original vision was a one of those truck bed campers and the car trailer behind. And then Michael Esses took that. Was Mike Esses? No, what did Mike Esses? Who was that? They did that Drift Week. I don't know if you saw that. They did that Drift Week starting in Texas. And one of the guys had exactly my vision, but he had an open trailer. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do so bad. But I haven't yet been able to convince the wife to get into that tiny of a container. So we'll see. I'm working. I'm going to just keep shrinking it until we're in the back of my truck. And I'm like, all right, babe, here we go.
That's awesome, man. That's like almost exactly where I'm at too. Like I'm getting ready to sell the plates that I've got, and I'm getting ready to move into an RV and just build a giant shop and lower my bills and all that, because I'm more or less hoping to do that same thing. Like, I don't know how far across the U.S. I'll go, but I would definitely love to get out of Oregon and go drift other places. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
and to be able to
I've got farm animals now, so I'm not going anywhere.
Man, I encourage you to do that. You should hit me up after the show, and I'd love to chat with you a little bit more about that. Pick your brain.
Definitely.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're going to let you go, Edward. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a good night.
It was a pleasure.
You too. See you, buddy.
All right.
Well, Ryan?
I think my brain is a little overloaded on the Ford stuff, but man, what a just wealth of knowledge.
Wow. I think. Oops.
It's time to go to.
Here we go.
It's time to drift to sleep. Is this our new exit?
Feel the way the e-brake pushes back in your hand. It's a cable clutch. Use your big
Feel
toe.
every inch.
Big toe pressing down. All right, this has been a pretty long episode. We're probably putting people to sleep now.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize for that. We're just having a little bit of fun, you know. But we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We want to thank you for telling a friend about what we're doing here. We're having a good time, right?
Oh, yeah. This is amazing. I love getting to hear everyone's backstories and where they started. And, I mean, especially a guy like that, man, he's been, like, all over, you know, Puerto Rico, all over the U.S. And it's crazy just to be able to hear and be able to listen to those experiences, you know, that he has. It's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of think that this meditative music like adds a little something to the end of the show. I like it.
We'll not have
Nick
to
is
put
giving
that out
me
there and see what people think.
Producer Nick's giving me a dirty look, so I better turn it off.
Is he giving you a dirty look or is he falling asleep?
Is he drifting to sleep?
He might just be drooling out the corner of his mouth. I'm not sure.
Hey, everybody, you can go out and find Edward, what he's doing, Edward Lee Thompson, and FMC Drift. It literally is on Facebook, just FMC Drift, and, of course, all of the other pages that he talked about, the GMC, Chevy LS Drift, and the BMW Drift. Make sure you go and check those out because he is doing some really cool stuff over there. And, you know, we didn't even get into a bunch of, I don't know, the cool footage that he has out there and just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, see, Ryan's showing me his list.
2 of those.
Yeah, you know, he's a wealth of knowledge.
He is. It's amazing hearing the stories, that's for sure. We're definitely going to have him back on for some more. Maybe we'll try to do like more of a technical talk on cars or something, you know, really get into some questions and stuff. Maybe we can put it out there and get some other people's questions, maybe some guys off the FMC Drift to, you know, because I'm sure there's people on the forum that want to know things about him, you know.
Oh, yeah. Once we start doing live to tape here, we'll go ahead and start having web extended stuff, and you can be looking forward to that. We're not quite there yet, but we'll hit that one day. Ryan, wow, insightful. I feel like my brain is full of Mustang facts, and
I feel like I'm slightly liking Mustangs more, and it hurts me a little bit on the inside. But
I'm going to go out and try to find one now.
I'm going to have to drink myself to sleep tonight.
Well, hopefully you guys don't have to drink yourselves to sleep because this has been an awesome episode. I want to thank Edward one more time for being here. Make sure you check us out on Facebook at Clutch Kick Radio, Instagram at Clutch Kick Radio, and watch for the pod everywhere you find your fine podcasts. So for Edward
we'll be
and Ryan,
here every Friday.
That's right. You guys have a good one and slide into your weekend.